Difficult. Women.
Hi. Hello again, friend in the box.
Hello.
In the
You live in
computer
this
box.
Yes, I live in a box. So I feel now.
In the Zoom box.
Yes.
Hello, I'm Marie.
I'm Katy, and this is the Difficult Women podcast. Welcome.
Welcome, everybody. I'm in Nashville. Katy's in Brooklyn. We're in a box in the computer.
The Zoom box.
Missing each other terribly.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I'm so over Zooming.
Oh, God. I mean, this is awful. This has gotten awful. I mean, it's been awful, but it's...
If I have to go to another fucking happy hour and pretend that I'm happy...
I'm not even getting invited to happy hours. I'm not even doing that. So,
Katy, we should do a happy hour.
Should
we do.
We do.
Yeah,
this is our happy hour.
That's true. I'm very happy. You have your tea. I have my coffee. Let's take a sip. It's early. That was some ASMR for you. Yeah. How are you? I'm checking in. How you doing?
I'm fine. A lot of work, a lot of doing stuff. I went on a very, very long journey recently to the great state of Connecticut. That was as far as I've gone so far.
Connecticut?
Area. Oh yes.
Why'd you go to Connecticut?
I'm shooting a pilot for this family. There's this lovely little family. The girl was on Broadway. One of the girls was on Broadway, and they want to have a pilot to show so they can kind of pitch the girls and stuff, which I think is great, and I get to shoot it, but it's very stressful. I'm very stressed.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's been neat. But but they were shooting in Connecticut because there's more space and stuff, and that's exciting to leave the state of New York. I've done it. I did it on Wednesday. Doing it again Monday, Tuesday.
You hop on a choo-choo train?
Nope.
Are you taking a bus?
Ubered. I literally Ubered to Connecticut.
Jesus Christ.
I didn't pay for it. So. I didn't know you could do that. I was legitimately worried because I thought that no one's going to drive me to Connecticut. Like did they do that? Do people do that? Oh, I looked it up, and Uber, I think the maximum you can ride in an Uber is 4 hours. So however far 4 hours will take you, you're allowed to request a trip that's 4 hours
So
long.
you just requested an Uber to Connecticut.
Yeah. And that's not even like, yeah. And in theory, they could have been like, 3 more hours to go. Where else do you want to go? We could have gone to Philadelphia. I don't know. Could have gone anywhere, whatever. Not anywhere, but whatever 4 hours would take you.
Wow. I didn't know you could do that.
I
That's
didn't
cool.
either. Yeah. Well, I mean, I presume as an Uber driver, you can choose whether or not you're willing to go on one of those big trips, but.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess you just like, I don't know what you do. 4 hours. Let's say you're an Uber driver and you pick someone up and they take them to, I don't know, Pennsylvania. Can you get so yeah, you make a chunk of change for that day, right? In those 4 hours, but then you got to get back. So, in theory, you can bring people back, but I always think like, God, you're going to get stuck in Pennsylvania. People are going to keep wanting to stay in Pennsylvania, and you're going to Uber around this town you don't know anything about.
Good point.
However, and then you're stuck in Pennsylvania for the rest of your life. That's what I feel.
Well, the
like
cool thing about Uber is you are your own boss, so you can turn that thing off and drive back home.
Yeah, it's just like that's a 4 hour drive alone in your car.
That's true.
You're not making any money. But,
wow. Well, congratulations on Connecticut.
Thanks. It's the tropical paradise I've always dreamed of, for sure.
We got to get you a vacay.
Oh, God,
definitely. Yeah.
I got to get shot up. I need to get my shot.
I know. I want the shot. What's New York? What's the status there?
Do we even have any? I don't know. It feels like simultaneously everybody's getting it and nobody's getting it. So I don't know. Mm-hmm. There's people that are getting it. I'm like, I don't know how you got it. But then there's people that like should definitely have it that haven't been able to get it. I know this woman, or I met this woman yesterday when I was at work, and she was like 63 or something. Mm. So she doesn't qualify, but she like could definitely use it. You know what I mean? Like that must be the most frustrating when you're just like, I'm 64 and a half. Can I get it? And they're like, nope. So yeah, and I mean, it is what it is, right? We only have so many. I get why it is that way. I did get put on a list because I guess even in New York, they're just throwing extra away.
Right.
They're happening just throwing it away. So there's a list now for like at the end, if they have extras, they're like pooling it together. I don't know what they do with it. They mix up all 3 of them and then they put them in a little vial and they shoot them in. But whatever, I'll take it. I was turned into like a mutant, but that's fine.
Well, apparently here in Tennessee, they're doing it now, like at the pharmacies and Kroger and all that sort of stuff. And you go online and it'll ask you, what's your occupation? And if you qualify, you can make an appointment very easily. I've heard through the grapevine, they're not checking at all. So people are just saying they're teachers or saying they're this, and then they go and get it. And there's no judgment from me right now, but you guys, we got to wait your turn. I don't know. As a podcast producer, editor who sits in my apartment alone, like I really want the vaccine so I can go to a dive bar. Right. That's not a good enough reason to like skip the line, personally. That's just me.
Well, and I'm a big advocate for like everybody needs it anyway, so I'm like whatever. So
if they're throwing them away,
but that's the thing.
We got to get on it.
Yeah, I feel I'm also not like trying to lie about it.
I know. I don't want to lie about it.
Out of line and stuff because if the only other thing is like if in Tennessee there's so much of it because no one's taking it. Mm-hmm. Then fly. I don't care. You know what I mean? Then there's a part of me. It's like, well, if no one's taking it and we, then somebody should take it.
Well, the outer counties, only 30% of the population are taking this vaccine. So there is a huge surplus. So like we got to figure something out. Yeah. We got to figure something out because we're just wasting.
I've been talking to some people in New York that are skeptical about it still, which sort of surprised me. But I'm trying to just very gently nudge everyone in the direction of the vaccine, saying like, I totally hear you. We had a podcast about it. If you are one of those people that's listening right now and unsure, we did like a debunking episode of the podcast on the vaccine and why it's actually very, very safe. So that's just what I'm just telling people. Yeah.
And hustle to get it. Like, or at least I'm trying to hustle. Like I'm trying to find a way to get it now. In the right way where there's a place that they have a surplus and that like they would throw it away if I wasn't there to like just give it to me, please. I'm ready. My parents got their second shot about 2 weeks ago. We went out to a patio on Friday night and partied it up. Oh my God.
Nice.
It was so fun. We were drinking all these cocktails. My dad goes, why haven't I had this? He held up an old fashioned. It's like, where has this been all my life? It's very funny. But we celebrated the fact that I didn't kill them this whole time. So.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Moving through the pandemic with seeing, my high risk parents this whole time has been, I did it. We did it, kind of. Yay.
Yeah, sounds like you did it. That's good.
Yeah. Oh God. So let's go to a commercial.
Cut to commercial. Free stuff is awesome, but free stuff to spice up your bedroom is even better.
Select almost any one item for 50% off, and then Adam and Eve loads on the free stuff.
Enter offer code HORIO at checkout and get 10 tantalizing free gifts.
A sexy item for him, a special gift for her, and a third item you'll both enjoy.
And 6 free spicy movies.
Ooh. Plus, free shipping.
That's HORIO, WHOREO, HORIO at adamandeve.com.
Welcome back.
Yes.
So, what we're going to be doing this whole month, because it is Women's History Month, each week we are going to get into some women's history. And today we're very excited to talk about Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera.
Who are these lovely ladies, you might be asking? Well, let us tell you.
The truth is, I really think that these two women should be taught in history classes. They should be taught in all high school classes because they're instrumental to the gay rights movement, specifically in New York City, especially during the Stonewall riots. Yes. So let's get into it.
Yes. So these lovely ladies were both gay liberation and transgender rights activists, and they were active from around in like the 70s time period, all the way through to their deaths. And we're I was actually very surprised and taken by how much they accomplished, considering, I know we still have long ways to go for gay and transgender rights. But at that in the 70s, especially, they really made an impact on. They specifically started this group called STAR, which was the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, and it was dedicated to helping homeless young drag queens, gay youths, and trans women. And like just that, I mean, just something like that was sort of like a grassroots effort on their part that I think helps so many people. You know, I feel very inspired by these ladies just because like they made changes where they could, and they were very effective changes in terms of like helping people actively.
Right. Well, so to dive into both of these women's lives, and I know I've learned about these people because I actually produced and edited a full series on them a couple months ago for the Oldest Profession podcast, which is a history podcast. So we actually did 3 parts about them, and actually I had the honor and pleasure of pulling raw audio from these women. So if ever you have a chance to Google some of their speeches and things, they really, I mean, they were performers. They were, they really, you know, could speak to the movement and inspired people by what they were saying. And they were saints. Like both of these women, they knew their neighbors and they cared for their neighbors and their community. And they, the biggest thing about STAR is like these queer youth, you know, they possibly would come out to their families and then be, you know, kicked out, you know, turned to the street. And so these young kids were homeless for you know, coming out to their families, and they didn't have anywhere to go. They would die on the streets if it hadn't have been for these women. So they came to the East Village, and they actually had a house in the East Village that provided a home for these otherwise homeless kids. So I'm really inspired by them with how many lives they saved,
right.
And how hard that they fought to save their own too.
Well, that was the thing too. Like when I was looking at Sylvia Rivera, her father left when she was a baby. Her mother was suicidal and killed herself when she was 3. She was raised by her grandmother, and then her grandmother was very difficult on her because she was very effeminate at a young age, and her grandmother just disapproved, and eventually Sylvia left the house and was a child prostitute at 11. And that's like how she started her life. So she really lived this. So she knew the struggles of these kids that were getting discarded by their parents because of their identity.
Right.
You know, I mean, I can't imagine throwing my kids away because they have a preference for, you know, not a preference, but they, you know, their sexual preference is different than what I wanted it to be. You know, I mean, who cares? It's incredible.
Well, the same thing with Marsha P. Johnson. She was born Malcolm Michaels Jr. And obviously we know her as Marsha P. Johnson, and the P stands for Pay It No Mind. She would go to court because she was arrested so many times, and she'd go to court and say, pay it no mind. But she was known to have been dressing up in drag or dresses as early as 5 years old and being completely ridiculed by the neighbors and even by her family. But like knowing you know, obviously we're cis white women, like we don't know what that experience is like at all. However, you know, you read these stories and you try to, you know, empathize with that, and like knowing, like, you know, being born in a different body than what you associate with or whatever. Like, I cannot imagine that experience. And it takes so much bravery to do what these people did. So they did. So they were kicked out from their families. And I mean, I think that it's pretty cool that New York City is known for this type of hub of different types of people or misfits or, you know, whatever. But especially, and I also learned like during this time, Paris was doing the same, and Berlin, like this stuff was happening all over the world. But in these big cities, people that were thrown out of their homes and they were homeless, they would then go to New York City, say, and then in Harlem specifically. And like you would then be able to choose your family. And so Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera found each other. And they really, till the end, they were family. But like you were saying, like they lived on the streets. They were hustlers. They sold sex to survive because they had no other means, And I think the cool thing about Marsha P. Johnson is that she was just, they said that she was saint-like because she really embraced like saving her community and feeding people who could not feed themselves. So like with little money she actually did make from hustling, she would usually do it to buy food for other people and just constantly be giving back. And with that mentality of there's her life, like just the ridicule she experienced as a child. And then I believe that there is a sexual assault instance in her childhood as well. And then the ridicule and stuff that she experienced when she first came to New York and continued on from the police and the moral squads and all that sort of stuff, to still have that like fiber in her to help another human being.
That was like one of the things that I was the most taken with when I was looking at this stuff. And I watched this it was like a kind of a very 90s, like low quality documentary style video about Sylvia Rivera, and same thing. Like I just couldn't believe that this woman who had been beaten down by the world so brutally in so many ways and had so many challenges. She struggled with alcoholism and drug use and all sorts of, substance abuse. She'd been living on the street. She had been living in a house at one point and then was back on the street and living on the Piers area, like on the street again at, later in her life when you think like, oh, she should have it together by then. It's like, no, she didn't have opportunities to get it together or whatever. And this person, she just devoted her life to helping other people. And it makes you go, what are all of us doing? Right. What are we doing with our lives? Because, and like you said, it's like a family thing. It's like, I think when you have so little, when you, and this is like almost a blessing in a weird way, I think, like when you have so little, you start to really realize like all people have is each other, really. That's all that really matters. So then I think that just ignites something in some people that are angels, like you're saying, who can see it so clearly. We are nothing without each other. And so why wouldn't you help these people? And if you've seen it firsthand and you're living around you all the time, I don't know.
Yeah. I think you hit something really on the nose by saying like these women had nothing to lose, because here they're hustlers, they're living on the streets. And at this point, the Stonewall Inn was a gay bar. And so actually like, there would be like men from Long Island with families coming and having cocktails and stuff. And then going back, because those types of people would have everything to lose. But Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson, they were living on the streets. They were fighting for gay rights. But because they had nothing, literally nothing to lose. And so the night of, I believe it was June 28th, 1969, was the beginning of the Stonewall riots. And the story goes that there was a raid at the Stonewall Inn, and this happened about once a month. It was owned by the mafia, and the mafia were the owners of the Stonewall were known to like pay off the police. But this one particular night, like they came out full force, raided the Stonewall. And story goes that Marsha P. Johnson was in there and she threw a shot glass against the mirror, and it was the shot glass heard around the world sort of thing. So that's one theory. There's another theory that she was sleeping on a park bench up the street, or
I think that's an interesting thing. There's a really interesting like article / video I think it was the Washington Post that dives into this story, this legend, and like yes, all of that is part of the legend. The whole like kind of like the sound clip that people think of when they think of Stonewall is that it was the gay rights. This is the clip that the quote that they used. The gay rights movement was born in 1969 at a beloved gay bar called the Stonewall Inn. The Stonewall Riot began when a drag queen, bereft by the death of Judy Garland, threw a brick at a police officer. The riot culminated in a Rockette-style kick line of drag queens facing down tactical police in riot gear. Then they like go through this process of like taking this apart and saying, well, is this true? Is any of this true? Right. I found this fascinating because this is exactly the story that I know about Stonewall Inn, that it's like the beginning of the movement and that like, you know, all of this stuff. Someone threw a brick at the police. It was a drag queen. So when they broke it down, they were saying that, number one, the gay rights movement did not begin in 1969. No. It did not begin. There had been a gay rights movement happening long before, you know, as long as there were, I mean, into the 1800s and stuff, people had been fighting for some of their rights to, you know, be who they are. So that was the first thing. And then what I liked what you said about the Stonewall Inn being this like mafia run place. They were saying that this beloved gay bar was like their favorite bar of all the gays was Stonewall Inn. No, it wasn't. It was just a place you could go because some places you just couldn't go. But there's all these gay gentlemen that are sort of listing all the places they preferred to go in Manhattan instead of the Stonewall Inn at that time. They're like, this place was way better. This place was way better. It just was the one where stuff went down. It was just the one that day. And then the glass thing is interesting. The brick thing is interesting because there's an audio of Marsha P. Johnson saying herself, I didn't throw it. So we know that it wasn't her because she said it wasn't her. And then sometimes she said it was, but she I guess admitted at some point like it wasn't me. I was actually uptown when it started, and she didn't get there until 2 a.m. She was there, but it wasn't until later. So they've sort of debunked that. Then it was sort of a question, well, who then threw the first? Was there a brick? And they were like discussing, like, there weren't any bricks. What brick were they throwing? There were some rocks. He was like, I think I threw a rock. There was like a small rock. And then it was like, oh, a shotgun. Did someone throw a shotgun? I also heard that Sylvia Rivera very much wanted to be a part of this story, but she was like 17 when it happened. And it's very unclear if she was even there that night at all. And a lot of people say she was not there. But she'd be like, I was there. I threw the first brick, because she just wanted to be included in the story. And I thought that she had because who doesn't like to, be talked about or, but also I thought she made a kind of a good point. She was like, will you write me into this story? Because I want people who look like me to feel represented in that story of the gay rights movement. And I guess like they did sort of write her into some of the like biographies of the Stonewall Inn situation. But by most accounts, she wasn't there at all. But that sort of, that's another thing. It's like, what really happened?
Sounds
what
like
didn't
it was
happen?
a rowdy couple of days if we don't know exactly what happened. There's another theory where like Marsha P. Johnson like scurried up a lamp pole and then dropped a brick from up a lamp pole onto a police car. Yeah. It's like, but this is why history is so cool.
Yeah. Well, and it's why it's like you can't take anything at face value because, what actually happened, what didn't. Mostly it's like, it can become like lore, and if it like motivates you to fight for rights, and like that's not all bad. But one of the parts of the story that's like is kind of damaging is that that part where the drag queen, the riot started because a drag queen threw a brick at a police officer because of the death of Judy Garland. Like that's like kind of weirdly stereotypical and like questionable, right? Well, Judy Garland had died like that day or the day before, or something very, very close to that time, and this had nothing to do with Judy Garland's death. But apparently that part of the story you can trace us back to a conservative reporter who was making fun of the gay rights activists and just making fun. It's like, oh, what, you were sad about Judy Garland, so you started this riot. So that is, I think, a very telling thing. Also, the word riot. A lot of people that were there were also saying like it was a celebration. It was like it was a rebellion. This guy was like saying, I think the word rebellion is a better word because it was more of like an inner rebellion to people sort of like crushing us. And then I think the police sort of took it to the next level, as they do, right? As we saw this summer, right? They say, oh, the riots this summer for George Floyd protests. And it's like, they weren't riots, they were people protesting. Right. And then the police come in and make it violent. So I think a similar thing happened that night. So the word riot itself is sort of like a questionable word to use for that night, because people weren't necessarily rioting. They were speaking out against what was unfair treatment.
Well, also, I mean, so when the police, raided Stonewall that evening, they were then doing genital checks, which they did quite often, and that was to just make sure that your gender matched your outer, whatever you were. Isn't that? But that took for hours to do, and so they were doing all these genital checks. But then so many hundreds of people showed up. There were police officers trapped in Stonewall with a reporter too, actually, and that's how we have more. I don't know if that reporter was doing a good job, because everything's like, we don't know exactly. All right. But maybe he was taking the accounts of
maybe he'd been drinking at the bar before.
Yeah, who knows?
That's why he was there.
But if anything, it really sparked a revolution. And then we go into the gay pride rally.
Yes. Can I say one more thing though about this that I really like?
Please.
So the last part of this like history or this like lore is that the riot culminated in a Rockette style kick line of drag queens facing down tactical police in riot gear, which sounds like no way. That actually is true.
I love
There's like, I like love that so much, that just in pure defiance and in this sort of sense of like, this is who we are, bitches. There was a line of drag queens in a Rockette line singing. There was a song. It was like, we are the Stonewall girls. We wear our hair in curls. We wear no underwear. We show our pubic hair. Right at the police. And like, what a great, I mean, it's not like fuck the police, which is also an appropriate thing to say to the police sometimes. But like, I just love that it was like, we are fighting you with joy. We're fighting you with fun, something fun, and being like, just let us be who we are.
Mm-hmm. Well, so then a year later, 1970, there was the Gay Pride Parade, which actually I have a question to you and to everybody. So I've actually heard, like, we say Gay Pride Parade, but the first Gay Pride was in celebration of Stonewall, but it was more of like a protest march or like a rally rather than a parade. So I just think it's interesting that, like, now it's like, I mean, I would go to Gay Pride every year. But I just think it's an interesting thing that, like, it's now a parade and, like, and I think it was the same thing then, maybe for the first, but I think that they did not call it parade.
Yeah, I don't know.
Could be corrected.
No, I don't know if they called it a parade or not. I did see pictures of the first one, and it looked very much more like a celebratory
like a
march. Like, it wasn't protest in the sense that it was like, we're remembering this. There was speeches like in a protest, that kind of thing. And certainly I read something about this either this past year or a couple years ago about specifically the Gay Pride Parade and how it's been so like inundated with number one, inundated with like corporate sponsorship, which is like the opposite of what it should be, because like there was no corporate sponsorship or gay allies and corporations when these things started, So now have them come and like kind of co-opt the parade for them to advertise in, it's like gross. Like, yeah. So, and there's people that, and I guess like, I'm sure that they give money for these things so that we can have like a big parade. But there are definitely some people that are like, stop it. Like, whoever's organizing the parades, there's people that are kind of unhappy with how that's going down. And then the other part that I do not have an opinion about this because I cannot really, but I know some people are a little upset with like that it sort of, they would say, devolved into like, men in like little underpants versus like people like remembering why they were there in the first place, like the marching for their rights. But I also kind of feel like in terms of that issue, like if it's a way to celebrate, then there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
I think also the drinking and the partying aspect is a little bit like, people don't love that. The activists don't always love that aspect of the parade. And that, like, cis people come and they're like, and heterosexual people come, and then they just it's like an excuse to get wasted on the street. It's like, that is that celebrating gay rights?
Right.
Like, you know, so I think that we do have to be careful, especially as like non-gay people.
Yes.
That we're respectful, and like, you know, should we even be participating in that parade? And is it a parade? Like, what is that? Yeah, I think you make a good point. Good question.
No, I think
other
about
people
this.
have thoughts.
Yeah. But also, I did not know this, but I learned that, you know, at the first Gay Pride March, the organizers said that they did not want drag queens involved because it would take away from the movement, because people wanted to get their pictures taken with the drag queens.
Which is actually an interesting thing, what we're just talking about with the current.
Right.
You know, it's still kind of an issue. So I don't know.
Right. So, so they actually, Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera were told to, like, you can't be a part of this. And so I guess that the story goes that they were like in the back of the line, and then they were like, well, fuck this. And then they got to the very front of the line before the march began. And there's actually pictures of this, of them marching in front of the march, which is pretty fucking badass.
That's great. And I think important, and probably why they wanted to push their way forward, like I was saying earlier, like, you have to have those visual cues for the kids that look like you.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You know, so like, it's important that they push their way to the front, to be like, we are a part of this too. And that is a thing that is also very interesting, but how marginalized the transgender people have been in the LGBTQ fights for equality.
Yeah.
And for, you know, civil rights.
Yeah.
It was interesting to see that. So from what I gleaned, Sylvia Rivera was very active in the gay rights movement at first. And then I think there was one moment, maybe the 3rd or 4th anniversary of Stonewall at the march, they didn't allow her to speak. They were like, you're not going to be able to do a speech, because they were trying to like push trans people out of the conversation, because they said that it made gay people look bad, which is fucked up. And she took the mic anyway, and that's like her most famous speech, where she was just kind of angrily kind of riling people up, trying to get them, you know, motivated. But I think it was sort of, some people were into it, some people were not so into it. And then she kind of stopped fighting for those rights. She was like, you know, fuck this. If people are not going to fight for my rights, why am I fighting, you know, for them to be free, but not me, you know?
And to be chewed up and spit out like that is, again, like, we're learning that happens in America so much.
And it happens
around the world, but
marginalized groups, right?
Yes.
That's the other thing that's so frustrating. It's like, you have a marginalized group like the gay community, and then within that community, they're marginalizing people even more. We see it in feminism. We have like a marginalized group of, you know, women, right? But then white women historically marginalize women of color within the fight. So what is that? You know, it's like there's this little urge in some people that's like, oh, we're being oppressed, so we have to oppress other people. You know, we'd think that like, oh, we're being oppressed, we should be able to see oppression in others and stand up for them. But it's funny how the humans don't do that. The humans. Did I just reveal that I'm an alien? I think I just revealed I'm an alien. Oops, I'm sorry. I am human too. Me human.
Well, so Marsha P. Johnson did contract AIDS. She was shot by a taxi driver who was trying to solicit sex and then didn't want to pay her. He shot her. And then, sadly, her body was found in the Hudson River, and the police deemed it a suicide.
Yeah, and they just didn't want to look into it at all, right?
Yeah, and everybody, you know, all of her friends, they all said that it would never be a suicide. It was obviously a murder. There was a guy touting around town that he had killed a drag queen named Marcia, but the police...
how obvious can it be? And then...
I know, right. But they actually, in 2012, I believe, they an activist got the NYPD to open the case up again just to look at it as a homicide. And then I believe in 2016, Victoria Cruz of the Anti-Violence Project also tried to get Johnson's case opened again, succeeded in gaining access to previously unreleased documents and witnesses' statements. But it's still,
was anyone ever convicted though, or no?
No. Nope. It's just it's very tragic. It's just an extremely tragic story for her. because she really, Andy Warhol took pictures of Marsha P. Johnson at one point. She couldn't afford glamorous clothes because she was homeless, as we all know, but she was able to get free flowers from the flower district in New York. And so she was known for walking around town wearing flowers, which is just such a beautiful image of someone lovely, who's like fighting for other people's livelihood.
And for your own, like you said earlier, like for their own lives. And
right.
Yeah, so that was in this little funny documentary I watched about Sylvia. There's a guy that talks about her, and so she kind of had a little bit of a renaissance, and she started getting into her drinking more. She lost her home. That's when she started living in the piers and was kind of back on the street. And when she talks about it, she's like, well, I found myself back there, but it was okay. I felt like I should be there because I could help people like in the trenches. And so she's still always helping people, even when she was at very low points, but was not so much active in the activism side of it so much. But then, so she was able to find a little bit of a job with somebody who hired her to work at the store. And he says, I thought like she was going to last like a day. I mean, I thought this person, is she really a working kind of person? Why is she on the street? Is she really a working type person? He said she was amazing. She was an incredible employee, just very, very good at the job. And it was like in a store. So she would just fix things up and then sell things and was just very good at it. So he was very pleasantly surprised by that. And then it seemed like she was starting to kind of get herself together a little bit. She went, started going to church and then volunteering at the church in the food bank. And she was so good at it that they, when the food bank, like, organizer left that job, the church immediately hired her. So then she had like another little bit of a job there. She was able to move in with a friend and have a home again, so she wasn't living on the streets anymore. And then she met sort of throughout that, was able to meet another trans woman, and they fell in love and they were lovers and had a lovely relationship. And they said that was the thing that kind of got her back into her activism. She could stop drinking. And they said when she wasn't drinking, she was just like a powerhouse, just full of fire and energy. And on her deathbed, like in the hospital, she died of liver cancer, in St. Vincent's Hospital. But in the hospital, she was still fighting. She was meeting with organizers and fighting for trans rights within the gay rights fight. And I just was like, that's incredible.
I know. On her deathbed. Yeah. I mean, we are not worthy.
No, what are we doing?
We're not
what
worthy.
Are we doing with our time?
I know. It's really, we're blessed with these people in our history that just change the trajectory for humans everywhere.
Yeah.
And these are two slivers of it in this life.
Yeah. And I think like what you were saying too, I just want to touch back on this idea that like they had nothing to lose so that they could be more vocal. Why would you want to cut that kind of a force out of your fight? Why would you want to cut out the people that can make the most difference? Because they have nothing to lose. You know what I mean? Why would you want to marginalize that? Why not amplify those voices? And we see that again, like I said, we see that again and again in lots of different ways. But I think that if anything, we should be embracing the people that can help us the most. Because if we, why wouldn't we?
And I just want to state, I do believe that trans murders are on the rise. I can't remember the exact amount last year, but I think it was close to 30, which was more than, it's rising, which is terrifying. For it to be where we are in history now, that like it's, you would think that we would learn.
Well, I wonder if it's rising because it's becoming more accepted generally, and more people are coming out as trans and, going through, whatever transitions they need to do. And there's just a little bit more open about it. And I know that, even on dating sites and stuff now, there's people that say right away, like, I'm trans, so you can say, oh, yes, let's go on a date, or not, let's not go on a date, or whatever. I wonder if some of the murders are happening more because there's just it's more visible in a way, and it freaks people out. As it should not do that. It shouldn't freak people out. But I think that's like the pushback to people. I mean, this is why people are afraid to come out, and afraid to be living and walking on the streets and being people, being themselves, because people freak out and commit crimes like that. Right. And I think that part of it is just this like not, misunderstanding. It's all this rhetoric too around like bathrooms, like the bathroom bills. It's like, who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck? We have politicians in office, blue and red, who are like molesting women left and right, not in a bathroom. And that's, we're trying to deal with that. Nothing's happening in a bathroom. Nothing has ever happened to me in a woman's bathroom. Unless maybe some heterosexual man went running in there touching people, but it wouldn't be because of like, because because Giuliani came in, and then I'd be like, oh God, or like Cuomo, I'd be like, oh my God, get out of here.
Get out of here.
That would be terrifying to me.
Right.
But it's like, but this like rhetoric around that kind of stuff, like that will cause people to be violent. It's, like, and with anything, even with the rise in violence against Asian people right now. Right. Because there's a rhetoric that's like, oh, the Asian flu and blah. It's like people freak out about nothing.
Right. Right. Stupidity.
It really is stupidity. And it's, again, lack of critical thinking and lack of just sort of like mob mentality and fear. Totally fear-based. Mm-hmm. Also, like, how does any of this affect your life?
Right.
If you're a person that was like, I'm going to go murder a trans person today, why?
Right.
How does that person just being who they want to be, not need to be, who they are, not want to be, they're being who they are. How is that hurting you?
Right.
I don't understand that.
Yeah. There's just too much of, I know better than you. I know what you should do. I know what you should do with your body. I know what it's just
and
too
we
much.
See a
and it's
lot
privilege,
of that, right?
elitism. It's just, and it's a lot of white people.
Yeah. So, and I mean, certainly as women, we experience that all the time in this country, which is like men telling us what we should be doing with our bodies. So we can relate to that fight, So I think, that like I was saying earlier, that I think that if anything, I hope this episode inspires feminist women to make sure that they're fighting for trans rights and trans women's rights, but also just trans men's rights too, because we're all fighting the same battle. We're fighting people trying to tell us what we can and cannot do with our bodies.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So It's the same fight.
Exactly. So happy Women's History Month. I hope you learned something. And we really hope that you take it upon yourselves to educate even further. We're not historians.
Yeah, just Google a little. That's what we do. We don't really know what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's fine. There's always more to find.
This stuff really matters. It really, really, really matters to educate yourself on these things. This is history. This is where we've come from, and this is where we're going. And we have got to do better. We just have to do fucking better. I was so angry at Reese Witherspoon this week.
What'd she do?
See you next Tuesday. I don't like her.
Oh, I totally missed this.
Hot take.
My head's been in my ass. What happened?
Hot take. She went to Hattie B's Hot Chicken. She didn't go to the original black-owned business, Prince's or Bolton's here in Nashville. She made a stupid video about it. And she makes me so angry. I know this is a hot topic.
Did people call her out, or was it just something you...
Oh, yeah, it's amazing. The comments on her Instagram is like, shame on you. But I trolled her hard because this woman, she grew up in Nashville. She left at a very young age to go to Los Angeles. And now she's capitalizing on the fact that she's from Nashville, but she like hasn't even been here. She has a stupid store that sells way overpriced shit. Her cookbook is almost racist. Like, don't even get me started on Reese Witherspoon. Do better, bitch.
That's sort of how I feel about Taylor Swift, by the way. But
I know you do. It's fine. It's
the
fine.
Welcome New York and the Nashville. She's like, I'm from New York. I'm from Nashville. I'm like, you're from Pennsylvania. Get the fuck out of here. Anyway,
I love that it's divulged into hating on Reese Witherspoon and Taylor Swift. But you know what?
Fine.
They should do better.
We gotta get our hate out somewhere. We should probably pick someone else. How about Cuomo and Giuliani? Let's pick.
Yeah,
them.
They suck even more.
They suck big dicks.
They suck big dicks. Okay, great. Happy Women's History Month.
Anyway, yes, happy Women's History.